offices for the duck curry cooking competition. It will be the sixth annual competition, and it moves around every year. I think we just finished in this year here was in Cancun. The year before it was in Jamaica, St. Martin, etc. Shifting to Mr. Ram and the serious conversation that we are having on the oil, the prediction on the prices or the forecast on prices. Mr. Ram, our budget, I believe, is pegged at $72 per barrel. Currently, prices now are pretty much in the upper 50s. Um, what do you, what major impact do you see immediately that could start affecting us from 2026 going on forward?
So even the Minister of Finance, although he downplayed the gravity of the situation in the delayed mid-year report, did speak of the risk factors, including fluctuation in commodity prices, geopolitical tensions, etc. That could seriously affect the capital program, the dream that President Ali has for taking this country. Every day is a new level to which we want to take it. We're building some greater infrastructure, but infrastructure has to be maintained. You have to have the resources in place to keep those things going. If we have to cut back at some point, we will. You know, it's an article of faith. It was like the Apostles' Creed. Oh, the budget is larger than the previous year by so much. I think the time is coming when we will have to take a rain check on that kind of optimism and say, you know what? Let us pause and reflect. Let's use this plateau to strengthen our base before moving to the next stage. So I believe there's going to be impact on the capital program. There's going to be impact on the revenue expenditure. You notice how the president has danced around this pledge and commitment for a cash grant and saying, well, you know, you have to take all these accounting variables. And then you've got one of a commentator, a letter writing to this paper, talking about exercise book is a cash grant, you know. They're looking for ways, they're trying to justify the setback we are facing. And every economy faces setback. And if you into commodities, you have to be prepared for that. When I was in Grenada, we used to have that situation often with cocoa. So, and that's a smaller country. So we will have problems. Vince was quite correct. Russia is a major player in the oil market. Trump is a supporter of Russia. Trump wants to see any embargo, any such kind of restrictions on Russia lifted, so they could put another couple, 3-4 million barrels of oil per day on the international market. If that happens, we will have a very serious problem. What we tend to forget, and it's a quirk of the market, there was one point where the spot price was negative, if you recall. So we can face the situation where the cost of production will be higher than revenue. And that means we'll be stuck at that 2% royalty and that 12.5% profit share for some time to come. And all the unrecouped losses will go forward into the further years. So you may be stuck for another 10 years in a very, very tight situation. And I think it's important that the government engages the country on these serious dangers. And again, I make the point, this is separate from the fact that there are geopolitical issues relating to Venezuela. Being close to Venezuela, if Trump, and you know, Gerald Ford, the battleship is there, the biggest in the world. I don't think that's an idle thing. He probably means to, he said he's going to get into the ground. What will happen? We may have a refugee crisis in Guyana. Then, as you know, Mr. Trump likes to take a share of everything. If Venezuela, on the other score, if Venezuela moves against Guyana, he might very well say, you know what, if you want my defense, you have to give me a share of your oil. He believes this is a real estate. And it's very, very dangerous. And you know, you guys, I congratulate you for succeeding with a president who takes a transactional and formative approach to governance rather than, moral and democratic and world order, which we have become accustomed to for decades and decades. That's changing. President Trump has upended everything that we accepted as normal in the world.
So we kind of got an indication which side of the aisle Mr. Ram sits on right there. So, Mr. Adams, I don't think I would want to engage a man of his caliber on the pros and the cons of President Trump. So I want to switch to you though. I've mentioned that you're well experienced. You've seen quite a lot. Mr. Ram painted. And by the way, our viewers, I just want to stress this very much. This is being prudent. This discussion is of prudence in terms of the reality that we are in now. Guyana is at the best opportunity ever to uplift its people, not only in Guyana, but throughout the world. We need to walk with our heads up. We need to be very proud of the nation that we have come from. The first generation post independence, we had some of the most brilliant minds that came out of Guyana, and we still have. We have not been able to expand on that. So we should not miss this opportunity, and it's so important that all of you engage. Don't care where you are, where you're from. Are you in London? You're in Europe? You're in Pennsylvania, California? You're in Toronto, Canada? You're within the Caribbean? And you're in Guyana. We know many of you in Guyana have more of a silent voice for all the reasons that we understand. But it is very important that these discussions take place, and they are not discussions that you're going to have all of those colorful language. I will not be calling Mr. Ram or Mr. Adams about the mother this and the mother that. We will be talking about what really affects the people and the nation at large. Mr. Adams, Mr. Ram just said some very key and important things. As a matter of fact, I didn't even take into account the geopolitical situation could cause a refugee crisis. And he also mentioned, of course, of a transactional president that we have now, given the fact that Ukraine was asked to give up some of its resources in exchange for security guarantees. What's your say to that, and how do you feel about, where things are at right now?
Well, and Chris was
Careful with your answer, Vince.
no, I'm cool. No, Chris was absolutely correct. The father of all transactionalism is Mr. Donald Trump. And I'm not saying it in a negative way. That's the reality. That's his style. And I've said this publicly. When people are saying, well, America's going to jump in if Venezuela attacks, America's going to jump in on Guyana's side. And which is what I think President Trump is trying to do, is get Maduro out of the way. And who do you think, which side is he going to take if something happens? 300 billion barrels versus 11 barrels, 11 billion barrels. I guess we ought to know Donald Trump by now to know where he's going to go. But anyway, but here is getting back to your question. Besides that, the problem that we have with this government, and of course it's driven by incompetence, and they don't want to listen to people with competence. They do not know how to govern or how to build a budget. In the United States government, because I've been there, that's what I had to do for a living as a senior executive, because we were the ones who ran the day-to-day operations of the nation. We built the budgets, but we had, of course, our annual budget was dependent upon a 3-year strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan, and a 10-year strategic plan. So we had to be planning ahead. And so when we do our annual budget, it had to tie into those plans. And if we made any changes, and things change from time to time. So we had to tie into those plans. But what is happening in Guyana, they get up tonight, get up in the morning, and they got some whims and fancies, and they say, we're going to build a bridge here without any feasibility studies. For every major project, you must have a feasibility studies. What's happening to our biggest project now with the gas to shore project? You see the problem, we did not even know that we did not have good foundation. It's costing us an extra $100 million. That project started out at 700 million US dollars. It's now about 2.5 billion. There is no planning. So there has to be planning up front. And here's the other thing. Where are these models that we're talking about here? The one thing that you do in projecting these strategic plans, you would have to project, for example, what's the price of oil over the next 10 years, using the data that you talked about that came from those institutions. You plug it into your model and you look at different scenarios. And you look at that window, well, okay, here is the worst case scenario. Here's the more reasonable case scenario, and you decide based, what should I plan on, and you leave it flexible that you can change. We have no model as to what we're going by. This thing is just a whims and fancies as to when you wake up, like Javier normally says, oh, it's a no-brainer without any plan. We have no plan. We have no feasibility studies, and what the feasibility study does is, of course, look at all the details, look at what the expectations are, what are the uncertainties that you got to deal with, and look at various options and alternatives if you run into these bad situations. We do not have any of that. That is the way you build budget. There's no planning in terms of how we build budget, and that's very dangerous because if oil prices drop. But here's the other thing. Here's the other thing that people are not paying attention to, Nohar. If we better pay attention, because when people hear, right now we're producing at what, 900 barrels per day. I think they're supposed to go up to 1.3 billion by 2028 or 2029. Guess what's going to happen? We better go look at, you remember I told you about those field development plans? We better go look at the field development plan for each of those projects. You know what happened? It goes up, and when it peaks, and we're near to the peaks, it's going to be a dive. It's going to come down like you wouldn't believe in terms of the slope downwards in terms of production rate. So what's going to happen after that peak, that year that it peaks? There's going to be a slide, and we're going to be producing far less oil because of the steep slope in the production rates, and then we're going to be producing a whole lot of water. The water out in the reservoir because so we're gonna have to deal with costs of production that is gonna skyrocket. So and then, like Chris said, we probably gonna end up with not making any profit. And then the oil company, you believe the oil company is still gonna operate. If they are not gonna make profit, they're gonna walk and leave us. So that's what the dilemma that we're dealing with. But there's no plan, there's no strategy, and there's no model that we should be basing our how we move forward.
Yeah, and thank you for taking us into that deep dive on the technical side of production. But I want to also just speak to some of the comments you made about the government and why it's so important for them to be on this program. We did invite Minister Ashney. He did not respond. We want to be able to have a diverse conversation so that we could get information from all sides and let the people decide. But shifting back to Mr. Ram, Mr. Ram, there was a fantastic article in Kaito News a few weeks ago, and we talked about the debt situation. I think that article pegged it at $7.7 billion in debts. Our NRF funds is just about 3.5 billion, I believe. You may have more current figures for me. But here we are, and let's just pause for a second and think and just kind of recap on this. We started this program to talk about information, yes, but we shifted towards the geopolitical situation with Venezuela, the prospects of oil hitting to the low 30s or mid 30s, even in the 40s, the effects it would have on Guyana. And these predictions or forecasts are coming out from JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. And indications are, of course, Mr. Ram pointed out how much the President of the United States would love to see oil price at a lower level. But given those information as the backdrop, shifting back, Mr. Ram, $7.7 billion in debts, $3.5 billion in NRF funds, And here we are heading into 2026 where oil prices are dropping. We have oil is 60%, I believe, of our GDP. Take our viewers a walkthrough on this, Mr. Ram. Walk the viewers through on the severe impact this can have on this young oil economy for Guyana.
Start with the measure that is usually used in terms of the sustainability of increasing debt. It's to take your debt to the GDP. That's how much you owe to how much your country earns. But we know that the GDP of Guyana, much of it does not belong to us. I would say conservatively, over 50% does not belong to us. So you're using the wrong yardstick. And let's be mindful. We can't even get our census right. When the Minister of Finance complains about the census and the person who heads the Stats Bureau falls under the Minister of Finance, we really have a problem. So look, if you take, and don't take my word for it, so our yardstick is wrong in terms of debt to GDP. Debt to earnings, maybe. It's what you earn because it's out of your earnings. Now, if you look at the mid-year report, I am reading from the report. I'm not taking a negative or pessimistic view. He said, what are our potential risks? We can have impact on our performance of our productive sectors, loss of revenue, damage to infrastructure, expenditure outlays to address increase in vector-borne disease. We can have decelerating GDP growth, growing fiscal deficits, current account deficits, and increasing inflation. He talked about the impact of fluctuations in exchange rates and interest rates on the costs of borrowing. So we do have, and the Minister of Finance. Now, this is a document, you have to give it credit where it's due. It has identified, as the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act requires, that you have to identify the risk. I don't think they've covered all the risks, but certainly they've covered a number of the economic risks that says, look, we have to be cautious. And this wild spending of money, you hear about Silica City. Have you ever heard of an audit into Silica City? No. Many of the projects that are being talked about, Vince talked just now, I mean, how could you not? Basic engineering information. You're doing a heavy piece of engineering. You're not going to do a soil test? That's elementary. But no, we didn't do those things. So in addition to all these risks that the Minister of Finance has identified on page 67 of 109 pages, you've got the political risk and the competence risk, because we have a serious competence risk. If you know how to do a basic feasibility study, we don't have a feasibility study in the gas to shore project. And by the time you get it, that might not be the most sensible thing, because look, sun is probably cheaper than anything. The Chinese, it's coming out of their noses. Solar power. Yeah. And what are we doing? We're going in the most expensive cost. And when Vince talked about 2.5 billion, I think it's a bit more than that, and it is counting. So we still don't know when are we going to get this. And how does it then integrate into the whole electricity arrangement? We are looking at some serious dangers, apart, as I said, from these risks that the Minister of Finance identified in the mid-year report 2025, are the competency risks. And we're not talking about the people, because the people are left. Competent people are, you do have some good people in the government machinery, etc. But they are not. We are not seeing that reflected in the governance of this country. That efficiency, cost, value added, and all of those things. We're not using those tests, because all the president of Guyana, President Ali, he just thinks that all you have to do is say it and it will happen. No, it doesn't happen that way in economics.
Yeah.
You have the reality of economics just comes back to bite you. Since Adam Smith days, nobody has reversed the principles of Adam Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ram. Mr. Ram mentioned a few things there, Mr. Adams, that most someone that's in tune economically, someone that's in tune with numbers, someone that understands those type of language would basically dissect what he just spoke about. Very important aspect that he mentioned. But I need you to break that down a little further now. Now, make believe you're in the oil business and you're drilling down further. We have, and I'm more concerned about the SMEs, the small to medium size entrepreneurs that getting into this oil economy. I mean, I know guys that are buying machineries. I know people that are investing or borrowing money to invest, taking loans at the bank, mortgaging, etc. Now, we want to wish well. We want to be prayerful, not just hopeful, but being prayerful that this is all going to turn out well for everybody. But drill further down, take some of the comments that Mr. Ram just brought out from the mid-year statements that came from Minister of Finance, I believe, and advise the people, tell the people like what you think some precautions should put in place.
Okay, so Chris mentioned some very, very important issues there, and I hope. Well, I don't think I really can't hope with this government, and this has nothing to do with politics. It's the reality. Competency, the competency factor is scary. There is now we cannot find, as far as I know, I know at the EPA, and that's where we are building, not a single person who knows what's going on in the oil industry that is trained in petroleum engineering that can go have a discussion with Exxon or even the other oil companies. So guess what happened? We rubber stamp everything we are told, and we are timid. We are intimidated by the Exxons of the world, and whatever they say, we just rubber stamp it. Now, the other thing that Chris mentioned is very important, and I think the entire Guyanese population ought to be paying attention, because a lot of times when the government is criticized in terms of their loans, going out there and taking loans, without any discretion, they come back with this debt to GDP ratio. Folks, take what Chris said again. The GDP that you divide by, most of it goes out to the country as far as oil is concerned. Remember, we only get, out of every 100 barrels of oil, we get 14 barrels of oil. Exxon gets 86 barrels of oil that goes out of the country. That's their oil. So if you want that, so that the entire GDP, almost all of it for the oil, belongs to Exxon. Now, to get to your unfeasibility studies, obviously there's a clause, by the way, Noor. There is a clause, the government likes to talk about sanctity of contract. Clause number 12 in that production sharing agreement says that thou shalt conduct a feasibility study for the use of gas coming from offshore. It says that in the contract, and they ignore that completely. So they're going against the same contract that says is sanctity of contract. So those are the issues. Now, in terms of the businesses, now the local content, which is, I think that's what you're getting. There's no question, but it has to be built into the contract with numbers. It has to say, for example, you must award, I don't know, 50%, because initially, remember, we do not have initially the expertise in certain areas to do the subcontracting work and provide. So you have got to put a number in the contract to say that Exxon, for example, has to make sure that 50% or 80% of those contracts go to local contractors. But here, and I've been through this in the United States, Noir. So guess what normally happens? They would come back and say, well, you know what? You do not have the expertise in this area that you're dealing with, where it, like I had to deal with the same thing in Ohio and some of those areas, those states that don't have their. So guess what we said? We said, nevertheless, you have to bring these contractors on board as what we call a mentor protege program, where you have to employ them as a contractor, and we gave you 3 to 5 years to train them to become competent so that they have to get the contracts. Or else what you're going to do if you just leave them loose, they're going to go on forever throughout their entire life with a contract and say, you don't have the expertise, so we're going to have to bring our people from abroad. So you've got to introduce a program such as the Mentor Protege program, where they have to employ the contractors and they have to train them for 3 to 5 years. You can put it in there so that when they're done with that mentoring program, they're eligible to get the contracts so that's all part of the local content thing to develop the expertise in that area. This is not something new. We've done it. I have done it partially not partially, on behalf of the U.S. government in certain areas that did not have that competence. It works.
Right, right. Thank you, Mr. Adams. And I'll kind of circle back to my question as time permits in the program. What I was getting at is that I wanted to be able to dissect the effects of this, what not me, but what JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are predicting. But I want to come back to that. I want to go back to Mr. Ram, and I know both of you have touched on this already. The Gas to Shore project is started about 400 million. You mentioned now it's about 2.5 billion. Some people are saying 2 billion, some 2.5. We already lost one case of $100 million in the court, is going to arbitration. And this Gas to Shore project, Mr. Rahman, if you could touch on it a little as well. There's no real clear numbers that I have read in the public domain. Everyone is talking about, and some of the spin doctors are saying, well, yeah, it's going to cut electricity by half. Now, currently, right now, electricity is about 32 cents per kilowatt. If it cuts it in half, 16 cents. But us competing, the president has talked about us becoming a manufacturing-based economy with food, supply, and CARICOM. Trinidad and Tobago does that, Mr. Ram. 90% of their goods are exported to Jamaica, etc. Their cost per kilowatt is something, I believe, about 6 cents per kilowatt. So I don't understand. I mean, are we spending over $2 to $3 billion, but yet we are not going to be competitive with our electricity if we are competing with Trinidad and Tobago on the manufacturing side? And again, I know this is already mentioned, no real feasibility study on this. Now, I bring this in the context of not the project itself, but on the broader picture of what we have in the backdrop of oil prices heading downwards. A project like the Gas to Shore. Now, a second Gas to Shore project has been announced for Berbice. I don't have figures on that. If that is going to be another $2 billion, I don't know, $2 to $3 billion. Then there's talk about a data center. I understand an agreement was signed. And a data center to the president's, kudos to the president for having vision for a data center, but that vision is far down the future. I'm not sure what this data center will do for us in the near term. That's going to be $2 to $4 billion plus 120 to $400 million per year to maintain. It's going to draw up to 100 megawatts capacity, which is about 45–50% of our total capacity now. So if you think we're getting blackout now, I know what's going to happen then. But I guess what I'm getting at is in the backdrop of these oil prices that we're looking at, in a state of being prudent, how can you comment rather than not from a critical standpoint, but rather from more of a commentary standpoint to the government and to the people, how important it is for much more informed and what would you say, prudent decisions in terms of expenditures?
Is that question addressed to me?
Well, yes, it is, Mr. Ram. I wanted you to kind of take all of what I just said and sum it up for the people so they could pretty much understand this.
Well, look, it's one thing for the president to say all of these things, and it's good to praise people for vision, but vision has to be rooted in realism, and if not in reality. You can't just, because you can think something, you can't make things happen by merely thinking about them. And I think that's a serious problem we have. And those numbers you're calling, I keep thinking, where does this payback come from? Because if you're going to spend any money, you want to make sure you at least recover that money plus something. Otherwise, why go into it in the first place? I don't want to stray, but I think this whole business of local content is sometimes misunderstood. It is one of the most violated laws in this country. We have a provision on the act that if you sell your citizenship to somebody, you can get jail. The other person doesn't get jail. You're only going to jail the guy in his. People have joined up in these local content scams. That's what I would call it. Where you agree to lend your name. And, it is simple for the local content secretariat to say, okay, show me how you arrived at the price for this other company's participation of 49% or 51%. And where is that money? That is not happening. The Local Content Act was supposed to be, the schedule to the act was supposed to be revised in 1 year. They have forgotten that. So then when you get to the gas to shore, look, forget Burbies, please, Mr. President, get real. You're talking about the gas to shore. And as we said, it is not, that's not the kind of thing that we should be pursuing now when we have solar, when we have the forest, when we have things to give us the where we become a really green country. Now, the agreement, the 2016 agreement provides for the development of associated gas and non-associated gas. Associated gas is where it comes out of the petroleum operation. Non-associated is that, look, you went looking for petroleum, you didn't find petroleum, but you found gas. And the agreement provides how that's done. What the government has in fact done, violated the agreement, as Vince said, this is supposed to be the most sacred of agreements. I'm sorry. And bypass the requirements of the 2016 agreement in relation to associated and non-associated gas, which creates its own framework. What this government has done is tied it in to the oil that we're getting, and so our cost oil is now inflated. One of the reasons why we're getting so few barrels out of every 100 is because part of that gas to shore thing expenditure comes out against the oil revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is quite a discussion happening
Nohar,
here.
quickly, could I add quickly here, Nohar?
Can I pose my question to you? You
Yes,
could add,
go
and
ahead.
then,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So a projection at $50 per barrel will probably bring in, based on what's projected in production, just over $2 billion. And if oil dropped to $45 per barrel, projection would be just less than 1.9, less than $2 billion. Am I correct to say Dr. Adams, right? Is it Dr. Adams?
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
Right, Doc, sorry, my apologies.
No, it's okay. Vince is even better.
But here we are talking about $2 to $4 billion data centers, gas to shore projects now over $2.5 billion, and a second gas to shore project. And I could go into the litany of projects, major projects, some of them already signed, etc. This has to be alarming, has to be very concerning. So add to what you were going to add, and then maybe you just want to comment on that again.
But again, it gets back again to the whims and fancies of this government. There's no planning. You do models. Anytime you're predicting and you're projecting over years, as to, well, okay, it's going to call electricity going to be half. What's the basis of that? You have to show a model. There are all kinds of factors that you put into that model, uncertainties of all prices. And then you have a window. One is a high probability, the other one low probability, and you work within that window. There is no planning. Jack Dill gets up, and I'm quoting him, when he was questioned about not following what the contract said to do feasibility study, he said, you don't have to do feasibility study. This is a no-brainer. So his feasibility study is this no-brainer. But let me tell you something, why this would never be a reality. And I'd be willing to bet Jack and anybody anything in terms of this half price, unless it's going to be heavily subsidized. Here you have a pipeline that is on the ocean floor that is going to have, I don't even, nobody even knows how much that pipeline costs. It will have to be maintained. To get the gas onshore is going to cost a heck of a lot of money. I don't know if you've been listening to Rutledge. Have you heard that? Then you hear that Rutledge up to recently said that gas product coming to shore is not his, it's not his high priority. This is a few days after Jaglio said that is his high priority. He said this gas to shore thing is not his priority. So the plan in Rutledge and Exxon plan was to re-inject that gas back into the reservoir, which would cost them much less. So all of that extra cost to get that gas onshore for this gas to shore project is going to cost a humongous extra amount of money. So how is Jaglio going to get to half the price of electricity when it's all done, when you've got to cover all of those upfront capital costs and the operation costs? Only heavens knows. He should be showing us how did he arrive. You don't just come up with a number. You pull it out of here and say, well, okay, here's what the price is going to be. You have to work on the economics, first of all, to see what the revenue will be and what the cost will be. And here's what, you could afford to do. But he's doing it in the reverse. It's going to be this. And then you got to backfill. And whatever it costs, in order for him to meet that number, we might be running way back, and it might be costing more than what it costs for revenues. It doesn't make any sense. So again, you get back to planning. He has to show us the numbers, and we need to be putting pressure on him to say, show us how did you arrive at this, whatever the electricity cost that you're projecting, including all of those other factors as to maintaining the cost of that gas getting here, maintaining the pipeline, the capital cost of the pipeline, and everything else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to make this comment as well. This is not criticizing per se, but I think this is a discourse, a discussion that where we want to be prudent, we want to be objective, we want to be able to get a clearer understanding on the ramification of these different changes, both geopolitically and the economic shift with oil prices. How does it really affect the people? Here again, I keep saying in all of the Globespan program that this is a window of opportunity for a nation. Now, a nation lifetime is not 25 years, not 50 years. A nation lifetime is hundreds of years. And here we are 5 years after oil, generating just over $3 billion a year now, but yet we are calling multiple projects that are way beyond that. So this discussion is needed, but I want to dovetail and go to for Mr. Adams' comment about the things that the government needs to do. But I want to change that in the trajectory going to Mr. Ram. Mr. Ram, Mr. Adams is saying, and you also pointed out that, the government coming short, Jack Deere, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I really want to be able to do, for you to comment a little on this, that we don't have an opposition leader, as you pointed out earlier, in frustration, if I understood you correctly. There is a majority in Parliament. We could stand on our head, we could skip, we could shout, we could start to use colorful language like so many other social media personalities. But at the ending of the day, there is a majority in parliament. What course could we take now? I mean, I guess this is a hard question, and it's some of it is obvious answers, but there's a level of frustration in people that's seeing this opportunity, but yet not all the people of Guyana is realizing the opportunity. What would be your advice to the people out there, the diaspora as well?
Well, I think we have got to keep doing what we're doing. People ask me, I turned 80 a couple of weeks ago. And people say, well, look, why are you wasting your time? But we have to keep trying. Each and every one of us has a duty to do what, to make our country better. All I would do in this particular case, Mr. Said, this mid-year report, and I come back to this because this is the latest set of financial information which we've had, is corroborated by the Bank of Guyana mid-year report as well. Do we understand that the Minister of Finance in this country is the president? He has not given out the portfolio of finance. He has kept it in the office of the president and has appointed Dr. Ashley Singh, a brilliant Guyanese, as minister in the office of the president with responsibility for finance. All President Jagdeo has to do is look at table 2 of this report, summary of explicit and implicit risks, and he will notice it covers climate-related risk, macroeconomic risk, public debt-related risk, contingent liability risk, and labor market considerations. Why doesn't, I am not even sure President Ali has read this report, because if he has read his report, he wouldn't go and make these outlandish, Don Quixotic kind of statements that he is making about what we're going to do with world-class this and world-class that. Let's try to make Guyana better without comparing it with any other country. But each of us has got to keep pointing it out. Yes, we will be criticized for doing what we do, but let us do it honestly. Let us back our criticisms with facts and not with malice, not with bad intentions, but to say, look, these are your own figures. This is your own report. A lot went into producing this report. Learn from it like how we are learning from it. But don't give up, and I congratulate you on keep doing what you're doing, calling out the government, even if they don't come. Starbuck News, we have the letter columns of the press. We just have to use all options that are available. Avoid direct attacks, avoid the usual cussing out and so on that we see, cybercrime and all of those things. Just let us try to make Guyana a better place and to discharge our duty as citizens of this great country.
And we must commend you, Mr. Ram, for your efforts, your diligence, and your commitments. You've stood with Guyana throughout the days. I also want to speak to those in the diaspora. Many of you are well-accomplished folks. You've done tremendously well. Your children are through colleges. You've already, most of you have passive incomes. How important it is that you need to play a role in reshaping Guyana. You were once there. We were once there, where we couldn't have a voice. Any voice that is in any way critical would be shut down. You would lose jobs. You wouldn't get opportunities, etc. And this is throughout. This is not a current government issue. This has been our history throughout all the governments. So it's your accomplished people in the diaspora, please do play your roles. I will some a quick announcement again. Buyfromone.com. They're shipping Guyanese style and Trinidadian style food all over the United States. You could get your cooked food, either you want your curry duck or your duck curry or your curry chicken. You could get your rotis, you could get all your 7 curry meals shipped directly to your home. They have shipments to go out to California, to Florida, to Pennsylvania. It's called buyfromone.com. And those folks who want to be able to cook their duck themselves or the fish. They also sell the duck, the fish, they ship everything to your home, and also all the curry powders, all the chow mins, all of your West Indian food. And then for Christmas, they have the black cake, the shipping Marby, etc. So go and buyfrom1.com and order your meals. They ship throughout the United States. Now, if you live in Queens, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Long Island, Bronx, you could go on curryrotibox.com. That's curryrotibox.com, and you get your meals a lot less expensive than some of the Uber prices. And they, of course, deliver directly to your homes in Queens, Brooklyn, Long Island, Bronx, and Manhattan. You could also call them at 347 238 2204. Mr. Adams, let's just move on quickly now. I have a few more things I really want to cover within this next 10. Well, we only have 10 minutes to go. May have to shift from this oil, but uh, Mr. Pandey once said that I think the oil will pass us through like a dose of salt. Is that what's happening here, Mr. Adams?
Well, no, I think what is happening here is that, again, I cannot overemphasize, and I think Christopher said the same thing. It all is a blessing to us, right? Guyana, without question, is a blessed country. There's no, when we look at the richest countries in the world, in the Middle East, guess what? The only thing they have all desert, sheer sand. They don't even have water. Guyana is called the land of many waters, and I know we take it for granted. But in places such as in the Middle East, the richest countries, water is more expensive and more dear than oil. We have water, we have all year kind of temperature that is amenable to agriculture. We don't have any major disasters such as hurricane and earthquakes and those type of things. So we are a blessed country. Now, on top of that, here comes all. I don't think we can ask for any more. But it is the governance. It is the governance. And the one thing that we've got that is really that is harming us is the lack of the competency that this government does not want to recognize because of, I guess, the arrogance. They believe they will know everything. And you mentioned the diaspora. All they've got to do is go into the diaspora. For any expertise, they can find a Guyanese in the diaspora that can satisfy their requirements. But like Mr. Jaglio, for example, which is a fact, I'm not attacking him personally, but he's supposed to be, this man talks, is the spokesman on oil and gas, and he talks as if he's an export. He does not understand oil and gas. All he's got to do is go get an export to speak on his behalf with credibility that the public would listen to and trust and understand. And the other thing about professionals, when they say something, they know that it has to be credible. But he can go say anything and get away with it because people excuse him, he's a politician. Get the credible people with the technical expertise that people can trust to speak for you and to advise you. And you know that what they're saying, they're facts and they can stand by it. So that's where we're lacking. It's a blessing, but is how do we manage this God-given wealth that we have, and we're not doing a good job with it, and it could end up in a disaster like all the other countries that have ended up in the disaster, such as Venezuela and some African countries, Nigeria, and all these other countries. And there's no accountability. Corruption is another thing, of course, we know. We've got to take care of those to make sure that the people who are supposed to get the benefit benefit from it.
Thank you, Mr. Adams, and that is disheartening in itself. And by you calling some of those countries that end up in shambles after a boatload of wealth that came out of oil. But on your note of blessings for Guyana, if I could spin over to Mr. Ram to let's point out a few good things that are happening. The president announced today $50,000 for disabilities. That's just about $250 per person disability. A 3 megawatt solar farm in Hampshire, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Um, you know, we have to pray for the oil price to hold. But a couple of positive things, Mr. Ram, that you could mention that give people hope that's listening to this program, and quite a few thousand people going to be listening to this program within the next few days as well.
I don't think it is fair on the government or on the country that we should be just talking it down. What we have to do is acknowledge what is good and what's wrong and how we can make it better. I yesterday a nephew of mine said, look, he had a little bit of difficulties, his wife and her old age pension, and I made an appointment for him to meet someone at the his vineyard for Scottish ministry. And he came back to me this morning. He said, look, he did not know persons like that exist in the public service. We do have the people. I accept, yes, we have the money. There have been efforts at poverty reduction, but look, we still have a minimum wage of $60,000 a month in the private sector. $60,000. There is no reason why we cannot do better. We need to, I like what the one that was announced today. It is targeted. It's persons to a particular class. But when you giving people who make millions and probably steal for the millions from the taxes of this country, you say they must get cash grants. No, let us apply ourselves. If you pay, if half of the people were to be removed because they can afford it, you can double the payment to everybody. Look, cash grants are not a bad thing. The president tried to mock it the other night at his, as he, I think he said, his rich friends event. So if we come back, we have the resources. What we need to do is to better manage those resources so that it accrues to the benefit of as many people as possible. One or two may fall through the crack, and this is why you have social services to identify those things. Otherwise, you should have serious policies to make sure that the majority of people don't live below the poverty line. We have far, far too many people who do so. And part of that is due to the corruption you have in the place. If you cut out the corruption, that's another area. Cut out the corruption, cut up the benefits that are paid to some people, they just don't deserve it. And give it to those who really need it. And I think, look, the government can be very, very popular because people just want to live a decent life. They don't care who is government or who is not government. They want to make sure that they have proper home, the children get good education, their meals on the table, there's some future, there's healthcare. And the healthcare is another area. The other night I sat at a function at the same table with the Minister of Health, and I must say I was impressed by his plans. Yes, these hospitals across the country, it's true that we don't have the resources, we don't have the human resources, and we have to address that. We're not paying enough attention to the human resources. And we just think, oh, we got all these big numbers registering with the NIS, but you register and then in 3 months you're gone. Numbers are inflated. So if we were to sit down, Mr. Singh, and we can solve a lot of these problems by acting as Guyanese rather than as people of one race or one political party or one ideological position or another.
Yeah, and the founding father of this government, the PPP, was in full support of critical support. So these discussions are necessary. By the way, on the healthcare side, I read an article in Kaitra News. Over 8,000 people have already visited the Dikendran Hospital that's built on the west coast, Demerara, and that was just opened in August. So that's significant. Mr. Adams, hold your thought for a second. I want to get Mr. Ram comment on this. We're running out of time. You will get to comment on everything Mr. Ram said, but I just want to get Mr. Ram comment on this too. I want to preface it first, Mr. Ram, by saying that as a Guyanese, I'm very grateful to OFAC. OFAC has started an initiative to bring out and flush out money laundering, gold smuggling, drug trade, etc. Something none of our governments were able to do. So I want to start out by prefacing it by saying that we are very grateful for OFAC efforts, but is OFAC efforts or are OFAC efforts in addressing the crime in Guyana being politicized to the extent that we're some of their directives are now being used as a political weapons. And should people in the diaspora be talking about this? I'm talking vis-a-vis the Demerara Bank guys. Their accounts were closed. Guys were fired because they were associated with people that was subject matters of OFAC, etc. Your quick comment on that, because that's very essential for us to go forward.
OFAC is part of that, although not necessarily identified that way, it's part of this international arrangement where you try to root out organized crime because of its impact on societies. To that extent, it's good. We have to ask ourselves, and we know we're talking about Mr. Azruddin Mohammed, and is that when all of this was taking place, where were the leaders of the PPP? Did they not know? Were they not recipients of some of the same money that is now part of the problem or identified problems? So again, if we were to address these problems and say, look, regardless of whom, let us fix campaign financing. Let us stop misusing the resources of the state to get power, and then we get power and behave as though we own the country, which is what's happening. So, you know, the whole idea of these elections and did not bring that democratic dividend that we were expecting. It didn't bring the financial dividend. It didn't bring the governance dividend. You have a leadership dividend. You don't have a leadership of the opposition, and you have the Speaker of the National Assembly conveniently out of the country. He is another one like Charles Ramson who really don't earn their keep. And we have to root out those things. Yes, OFAC, and those are bad things. Those are good things in the sense they help to root out bad things. But governance, we seem to think that, oh, you know, Charles Ramson can do what he wants, or Mansour Nadir can go off. You know, Parliament is just about convening, and you somehow, somewhere gallivanting on business that's totally unrelated together. That's unacceptable. So let us not be hypocritical about this. OFAC is good. Money laundering is good. It's sometimes used. The poor people can't easily open an account. But those little details we can work out again if we identify them and say how best do we deal with them. But it's that conversation that we need that is so missing. And thank goodness that Globespan is trying to fill that gap.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ram, for your contribution. I mean, having a person of your caliber in Globespan certainly is very much worth quite a bit for our viewers to get an understanding of broad-based understanding from a legal framework and also from an economic standpoint. Yeah, so Mr. Adams, you got quite a bit. Devin, please bear with us for a few more minutes. I know Mr. Adams needs to fill in on some of the comments there.
Oh, I absolutely agree with Chris, and you know, your suggestion too, that this here is without question weaponizing of OFAC, but it's not only weaponizing, it's targeted against one individual and I don't hold any brief for Mr. Azharuddin because, as you know, I support another party, so I don't hold any brief for him. However, it's a target. What happened to Mae Thomas? There's a whole long list of people on that OFAC list. What has happened to them, including, I think, a police officer? What has happened to, why is it targeted towards Mr. Azharuddin? Because he is, without question, a political threat, as he has shown. I'm all in favor of treating everybody fairly, but this particular case, he is not being treated fairly. And I think, and we prefer to be, this government prefer to put us in a situation where there's a potential for constitutional crisis. Here we've got a speaker who, you know, he's gone wherever he's gone, but he's holding the country at ransom and the constitution of the nation at ransom by leaving or saying that he's left. Why do you have a deputy? What happens if he's unavailable for whatever reasons, you know, that you know, God forbid something happens to him? What happened? The whole country is there's never going to be an opposition leader elect. That is why you have a deputy speaker. So this whole thing here it's a charade, because and targeted is not only weaponized, but the weapon is pointed at one person. OFAC says it's a long list of people, but it's pointed at one person for for their personal agenda. But I want to go back to something very quickly, Noir and Christopher Ram. Again, we all owe him a lot in this whole thing about transparency. It's very important because
Stop that, man. Stop that.
Because that's what is so critical here in terms of transparency. And I know Chris has been, for you're providing information, and you wonder, they cannot. Well, why don't they? What do they have to hide? Which means that they know that they're doing wrong by hiding it. You only hide something if you know that you're doing something wrong. Because if you know that it doesn't, it doesn't matter whether you release it or not, you're going to release it, which means that if you're hiding it, you yourself is accepting and telling the public that there's a reason why you're hiding it, because there's something wrong you don't want the public to see that you're doing. So they're admitting that they're doing something wrong by not releasing these critical information that we talked about, that belongs, by the way, Noir, it belongs to the people, not the government.
Absolutely.
So I want to stand with Chris again. I know that he's the man on the ground, and I want to stand with him and support his courage. And I hope the entire nation supports him and the others who've been with him.
Yeah, and thank you for those comments, Mr. Adams. And very quickly, again, we at Globespan here don't take any sides. We certainly don't have any brief for Mr. Mohammed and what they're doing. But I have been following some of their posting on the team Mohammed, and my God, some of the issues they're bringing out about the people. If those things are true, certainly they need to be addressed. So he may not have been elected as the opposition leaders, but they have been very effective on the ground in getting to people and trying to be able. They brought out a lot of issues with situations in the school, students studying on the roofs that are leaking. So many different issues that I've seen on their a litany of issues. I want to thank Devon for being so patient with us. I also want to extend birthday wishes to Mr. GHK Lal. I believe he's going to be celebrating 70th birthday. A man that has been, in the public domain, they were trying to push all this gold issue to this guy when, this gold problem has been existing for quite so many years. So again, I want to thank you, gentlemen. I really hope that the viewers could get an understanding that they do have a role to play. They must not be passive in all of this. We need to be able to inform the people of Guyana and the people living outside of Guyana, all the diasporans, how important it is for their role in help shaping Guyana going forward. So thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Ram, it's always a pleasure to have you on. And Mr. Adams, thank you for taking the time away from your traveling schedule, your backdrop of your hotel room to spend with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Noir, and I appreciate it. And thanks, Chris.
Okay, gentlemen.
Okay, good.